There is a man in football history who was officially declared dead by a communist government, and then went on to score over 300 goals in a new country under a different name. The government that buried him on paper watched him lift a European Cup on television. What do you do when the country that made you decides you no longer exist? What do you do when football is the only language left that will have you? It begins in Budapest in 1927, in a working-class district where the streets were narrow and ambition had no logical reason to exist. A boy was born into a family with very little, in a city that was still healing from one war and quietly preparing for another. His father played local football and passed on something more than technique. He passed on an obsession, the kind that makes a child forget hunger and cold and time itself. The boy trained alone when no one else would train with him. He would kick a ball against brick walls for hours, developing a left foot that coaches would later describe as something close to supernatural. By the time he was a teenager, the local club Kispest had already noticed him. But the world around him was shifting in ways no football talent could outrun. World War II tore through Budapest and left nothing untouched. Stadiums became storage depots, players became soldiers, and football became something people did to remember that they were still human. He survived the war and returned to football with an anger and a hunger that could not be contained within a single club. Kispest were absorbed into the Hungarian army structure and renamed, and suddenly this local boy was playing for the state. Hungary under communism was building an ideology and needed symbols. Football, it turned out, was the perfect propaganda tool, and this young striker was the most dangerous weapon they had. But propaganda needs performance, and this team was about to deliver something that would stop the entire world of football in its tracks. If you want to follow more stories like this one, stories that go deeper than the headlines, now is the moment to follow the channel. The Hungarian national team of the early 1950s became known as the Magnificent Magyars. They played a style of football that had not been seen before, fluid, fast, positionally radical, and almost impossible to defend against. At the center of everything was this stocky boy from the back streets of Budapest, now a man with a captain armband and a left foot that defenders genuinely feared. He did not run fast. He did not need to. November 1953, Wembley Stadium, England vs Hungary. England had never lost a home international match to a team from outside Britain. What happened next humiliated them in front of 90,000 people. The match ended 6-3. Hungary were not just better. They were from a different dimension of football. The English press did not know how to write about it. Some called it the end of an era. They were right. Their striker scored a hat-trick that day, including a drag-back move so quick that the English defender fell over trying to follow it. That moment was replayed, studied and argued about for decades. The 1954 World Cup came and Hungary were favorites. They arrived in Switzerland unbeaten in 4 years, having destroyed every opponent in their path. The world assumed the trophy was already theirs. They were wrong. The final against West Germany became one of the most controversial matches in World Cup history. Hungary led 2-0 inside 8 minutes. And then something went horribly wrong. West Germany came back, 3-2. The greatest national team of its generation, perhaps the greatest collection of players ever to represent one country, left without the World Cup. The captain left on an injury and watched the collapse from the sideline. Then came 1956. The Hungarian Revolution. Citizens rose against the Soviet-backed government in the streets of Budapest. The army opened fire on its own people. The national football team was on tour in Western Europe when the uprising began. When the Soviet tanks rolled in, many players made a decision that would change their lives forever. They did not go home. The Hungarian government labeled them deserters. Their captain, the man who had dragged back a defender at Wembley, was now officially a traitor. His military rank was revoked. His name was erased from state records. He wandered through Europe for 2 years. There were trials at various clubs. There were offers that fell through. He was overweight by this point, past 30, and many in football assumed his story was over. And then Real Madrid called. Not because they needed a project. Because their coach had watched him in a friendly and said simply, "This man still knows where the goal is better than anyone alive." Real Madrid in the late 1950s were assembling something that had never existed in football before. A team of international superstars playing for the most ambitious club in the world. He fitted in immediately. He qualified for Spanish citizenship in 1961 and played for the Spanish national team, making him one of the only men in history to play World Cup football for two different nations. The deserter had found a second country. The 1960 European Cup final. Real Madrid vs Eintracht Frankfurt at Hampden Park in Glasgow. 127,000 people in the stadium. It is still called the greatest club match ever played. Real Madrid won 7-3. Their Hungarian striker scored 4 of them. He was 33 years old, supposedly finished, officially a deserter from a country that no longer considered him a citizen. He was the best player on the pitch. He eventually returned to Hungary as a coach in the 1990s, decades after the government that had erased him collapsed. Old men who had watched him as children wept at airports when he landed. FIFA eventually named their award for the highest international goalscorer in a calendar year after him. The name on that award belongs to the boy from the Budapest backstreet who was officially dead on paper while scoring hat tricks on television. He passed away in 2006 in Budapest. The city that had erased him gave him a state funeral. The stadium where his career began was renamed in his honor. He scored over 500 goals in competitive football across 2 countries, 2 national teams, and 6 decades of the sport. Not bad for a man the government once declared did not exist. If this story moved you, follow Football Untold, because every week we find another story that history almost forgot to tell.